You're listening to Productivity Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. She is passionate, direct, and sometimes a little sarcastic, but always gives you what you need to succeed in business. Now, here's your host, Amber De La Garza, the Productivity Specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. Today is episode 46. Inside the Head of a Results-Driven Project Manager with Natalie Gingrich. If you are an entrepreneur who wants to take consistent, massive, focused action in your business and life, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. I am really looking forward to you listening in on this episode because you get to meet our guest, Natalie Gingrich. Natalie is a quintessential Type A leader who thoroughly enjoys helping her entrepreneurial peers move through their businesses into action with her love of project management. After 15 years in a Fortune 150 company, she uses her tremendous drive, education, and professional experience to serve those in a space known for creative and visionary thinkers. She combines her passion for people with simplified processes and practical project management to create authentic movement in business. As a mother of two and a native Texan, her heart is big and eager to serve. Natalie works to manage your people and processes so you can get back to managing your vision. When listening in on my conversation with Natalie, you will discover the 7 objectives that are important to every business, when multitasking with a purpose might make sense, why you're making silly decisions in your business and how to stop them, tips for business owners who are their own project managers, and so much more. So let's dive right in and meet Natalie. Hello, Natalie. How are you doing today?
I'm awesome, Amber. It's so awesome to be here.
I know. I'm so excited. Welcome to Productivity Straight Talk, and I'm so glad we were able to make this interview work. We actually met in October of 2017 at a conference, and I did not know who you were, but I feel like as soon as I saw you from across the room, we connected immediately, and we just really hit it off. I feel like we talk the same language, and we have a lot of the same energy, and so I think this interview is going to be phenomenal for our listeners today.
Awesome. Yes. And I have to admit that when I saw you, number one, you were striking. But number two, when I found out the name of your podcast, I was like, now that's a woman that I need to connect with.
Yes. And so, okay, I know that I already did an intro for you, but that's like the textbook intro. I want you to give your own, talk to us a little bit about you and how did you become a project manager? What's your story?
Alrighty, are you ready for this?
I am.
This is a good one. So I will tell people I was born a natural organizer. I was born very Type A and very organized. And over time, I had just found myself in many helping professions. And so I went to school for cardiac rehab and nursing. Who would have?
Yeah, that wasn't what I was expecting, but go for it.
No. And so after that, I was in healthcare for a little bit, and then I taught in the college. And everywhere I've gone, I've just, not to brag on myself, but I've been very successful as far as these corporations and these organizations are concerned because I was always productive. So even if I wasn't the smartest person in the room or had the highest degrees or whatnot, I was always very productive because I'm just a taskmaster like that. So I continued. We had a job relocation and I found myself in San Antonio, Texas, which is where we still live today. And I went to work for a big corporation here in town. It's a Fortune 150 company. And in doing that, that's really when my business journey, my corporate professions just absolutely took off. I came in there from a human resources perspective, which lined up with my business undergraduate degree. And from there, I worked in project management and eventually became the chief of staff for a senior vice president. So that is along all of that entire path. I was really just someone who was always making sure that things were getting done, that we were very strategic and at the same time implementing as quickly and as efficiently as we possibly could. And luckily, some people just loathe that they came from a corporate background or they had a really bad experience. I tend to be very, very thankful and grateful for it because I was given so many tools that I probably would have not invested in on my own. So lucky for me, I walked out of there. I have a certification in project management and some specialties in human resources. So over time, it really led me to be this chief of staff. And those are the skill sets that I'm still using today on my own.
And now you have a business all about being chief of staff and project managing. And you really segued those skills into a business that really serves other entrepreneurs now.
Yes, it is. It's such a natural feeling. And I really love what I do every single day.
I get that from you. I got that from like all of our chats at this conference as well. I think that obviously what you do is such in demand, whether a company, even if a company's not quite there yet that can afford it, they're like, oh, drooling over the idea of having someone that can help with all of their staff and project manage. And you were actually said something that I don't want to get skipped over is that you're really good at not just strategy, but implementation. Because I think that some people have one or the other skill. And so I love that you balance the two very, very well.
Yes. And I would say I've done a lot of assessments, and all of us productivity nerds out there have probably taken every single type of personality and trait assessment out there. And I actually implemented many of those in this corporation that I worked at. But I can tell you that if you had to compare the two, it's never 50-50 for anybody. But people in this chief of staff, people that would excel in this type of role, find themselves very close to that. I think I weigh a little bit heavier on the implementation side because I love following things to completion. So anyway, little tidbit about me.
Yes. Okay. So then tell me who your ideal client is. Who would hire you and what would you do when they hired you?
I am really focusing on the small business owner right now. And so in the United States, when we look at small business owners, we're looking at companies that have less than 50 employees. That is a lot of people out there. And while I have done this for a large corporation with 33,000 people, it feels so good. Remember, I have a passion for people and kind of that heart-centered connection. And so I really love helping people that have really small businesses. And so even though I said the US calls a small business anybody who has a company with less than 49 employees, I can tell you that I work with one team. The biggest team that I work with has 10 people on it. The majority of them are solopreneurs that have virtual assistants and 1099, some contractors that help them to execute their vision.
Yeah. When I spoke to you offline, because I was very intrigued about your services and found out about some of these big brands that you work for, it was very eye-opening to me how much can get done with a small army. They're smaller teams, but they're mighty. And working with you, they're able to get so much done. So it doesn't really always take 25 employees or 49 employees to run some pretty big brands.
That's absolutely true. Yes. You'd be surprised what can happen when you have focus behind you and also somebody just kind of lead the way of the people. And I think that's usually what my ideal client is looking for. They have big visions, but they've been really brought down by the minutia of what has to happen to make these dreams come to life. And so by having somebody take over either the project side or the people side, or perhaps both, it really allows them to get back into their jam and what they really love doing.
Yeah, I think that your service is phenomenal for the traditional personality types, entrepreneurs, where they have 100 ideas, big dreaming. And for them, it's sometimes very difficult to get down into the details and do what it takes to actually bring these dreams and goals and ideas to fruition. And it's people like you and building a team of people around them that really gives them what they need to bring that to fruition and like serve the world with whatever great idea they had. It doesn't just become a passing idea. I think that it's so valuable to have someone like you on their team to balance that out in their personalities.
And it's really cool because people who are big dreamers, I've worked with people who have just amazing dreams. And if they didn't have a robust team and people that had an adequate skill set to complement them, they just wouldn't be able to put all these things out there. And so these things are big, right? They're big to us, they're big to consumers, and they're certainly big to the business owner themselves. But in the traditional way of doing this, and if you're starting out and you're trying to save money and you don't want to grow a team too quickly and all of those drawbacks to this, the result is you don't put out as much as you really want to. And then it kind of takes away your zest for the whole reason that you went into business. So it's awesome to come in and help these people out.
So right. So right. We're talking about solopreneurs, one business owner with some contractors, maybe an assistant, very small. That is my business now. I have a couple contractors. I have a virtual assistant and then myself. When we're talking about where you said people lean one way or the other, I'm definitely task oriented. Mm-hmm. So much so that I actually have to build out time on my calendar to dream big because it needs both. Every business needs both. And when I dream big, if I'm not careful to leave the details behind, I'll get stuck in the, well, how and when and where and what's the checklist, and that limits that big thinking. So I have found for myself a way to work around that is that I mastermind with people that are super creative. And when I say creative, I mean things that I would never imagine doing. And it makes me get outside my comfort zone. And then after we're done brainstorming, I can go back and say, okay, well, now what is the implementation plan to actually make that a reality?
I love that, Amber. And that has been one of my biggest, most profound learnings of this past year in 2017 is really to make sure that I'm surrounding myself with a diverse group of people. In my past life, I would always be around people that thought like me, that implemented like me, that had a people focus like me, and had similar businesses, even in the small business space. And in reality, the most fruitful piece of my 2017 was making sure that I was around people who thought differently because it allowed me to truly dream. I'm a controlling type. That is just my personality. And so I would really, exactly like you said, I would start to think about something and all of a sudden I would reel myself back in thinking about, but wait, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And this is the marketing plan and this is the team plan. And by all means, that will slow anybody down. So it was very nice to be able to step away, have that dreaming time, or even taking CEO days. I mean, they're hard to come by these days, but it's so nice just to step out and to really allow myself the space to just do and dream and think of all the things and not feel like I have to make a list or a plan, because that is my natural tendency.
Yes, yes. I've talked in past episodes about how our personality plays in part with our productivity or even how we just tend to grow our businesses. And I have found that masterminding and being purposeful with the people we surround ourselves, like you said, really lets you get outside of what your norm is. And then you start seeing different results because you start seeing your business through the lens of different people's perspectives and opinions and experiences. And it's really, really valuable. So I'm glad you've had that same experience in 2017. And I think like you, we're both going to be continuing that into 2018 and beyond. So that's great.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, today I want to talk to you specifically about project management. And so this is your wheelhouse, this is your expertise. And I would love to hear what you want to share with our business owners and entrepreneurs that are listening. Where does someone start and what's the mindset around it? Where do you start business owners when you talk about project management?
That is such a great question, Amber. And I tell you, people come to me and they're like, I don't like the details. I don't like this. And the quote I start almost every conversation with is, in the absence of a project manager on your team, you are the project manager. So everybody I would say, if you're in business, you've got a little bit of project management in you somewhere, or you have found somebody that complements you in a way that can really manage your projects, whether they're certified or they call themselves a project manager. Doesn't really matter because everyone is not going to have a project manager. So I would love to just talk to people and have a conversation with you about the word multitasking. And when we talk about business, we usually think of we think of the best businesses being very streamlined and doing one thing at a time before we move to another. And I have an interesting thought and theory. And the topic that I wanted to chat with you guys about is multitasking with a purpose. One of the things I speak about a lot is focused action is the best action, which contradicts multitasking with a purpose. So
yes, because I would actually 100% agree with that. Focused action, it will create the success. Is that what you said? Focused action is
the best action.
The best action. Okay, yeah. So I say something very similar. So when you said wanting to talk about multitasking with a purpose, I'm like, no. There's no way that multitasking is going to help. So let's hear it. Let's give it to us.
Alrighty. So here's how I break this down. When I start working with somebody, I always ask them to define their mission, vision, and values. This is very business coach like. If you've worked with a business coach, I hope that they have started their work with you by talking and defining your mission, vision, and values. And just by being in the industry that I'm in, I like to go over those, and you would be surprised how many people I get on a phone call with or I meet in person who haven't gone through that exercise. And so that is something that's extremely foundational with bringing anybody onto your team, but especially a project manager who's going to be helping you kind of pull things out of your head and get them into a plan and assign to people. So we go over your mission, vision, and values, and then we're going to start looking at the objectives. And so this is kind of professorial here for a second, but there are 7 objectives that are important to every single business. It doesn't matter if you're Target, if you're Sears, if you are Amber or Natalie. It doesn't matter the size of your business. We all have 7, and they're all similar. So I'll just read these off really quickly. If you're a note taker, if you're just listening, either way. But visibility, creating products, your financials, finding operational efficiencies, scaling your business, professional development, and then customer service. And so those are the 7 that are important to every single business. When I work with you, I have you really evaluate which of those is the most important. So now we start the prioritization. If we only focus on one of those things, let's say that we are creating a new product. So that product can be anything, kind of dream along with me, but that product could be a new software. It could be a new it could literally be a physical product. It could be a online course. It could be a keynote speech. It could be a lot of things, but whatever it is that makes sense to your business, if you were only focusing on getting that product out the door, you would miss the other components that are extremely important, which is making sure that you were visible and maybe that you had the team behind you to get that out the door.
And I just want to say, while we are dreaming with you, I actually got to do this exercise with you in October. So this is really cool. And if you want to use me as an example, I'm totally for it because I definitely did this exercise.
Awesome. I know you were such a good student. She came to me in the evening and she's like, okay, let's go over this again.
Because it's like, it's totally my forte. And when you can hear people teach something that even if it's similar, but it's just from a different perspective, some of these objectives that you shared is like, duh, yes, but I hadn't put it into the 7 simple objectives before. And so when you were able to do that into that framework, it let me clearly think about each one independently. So I really liked that.
Awesome. So of those 7 that I just talked about, with the example I just gave of putting out a product development may be your number 1. Then number 2 may be visibility. And let's just say the third one is scaling, which is all about having the right people on your team to get this done. You've still got 4 underneath it, and they're important, but the top 3 we've identified as being the very most important. So if you think of them as dependencies and kind of piggybacking on one another, if we don't build up a list to sell to, if we don't get out marketing materials, then we don't have anyone to share this product with. So they all piggyback off of one another. And if we only worked on getting that product out, our sales would be so lackluster and we would lose the love of what we're doing. So I talk about multitasking. In the event that you've already identified the top 3 objectives, now you're going to break down the projects underneath those. So visibility. How are we going to become visible? Well, we're going to do some Facebook Lives. We're going to send out some mailers to our local market. We are going to
do podcast interviews.
There you go. Perfect. And now we're going to outreach for podcasts. So each of those now become a project. So we've gone from mission, vision, and value, kind of that core foundation, to the objective, which in this case is visibility. And now we have the projects, which is getting on podcast, coming up with a Facebook ad campaign, and sending out mailers. And all of those have many components underneath this. Even in my experience in connecting with you, you sent the best. I actually held on to it because I was like, this is such a good prep material. But, receiving that and making sure I had my talking points together today. There are multiple steps that go along with getting on that podcast. So we've taken it all the way from that foundation to the objective, to the project, and now to the task. If we are only working at the objective level, which is I need to become more visible or I need to create a product, we will never, ever get to that implementation phase that you may not love, but somebody out there cannot wait to come join you to get that off your plate so you can all make money. So multitasking has to happen. And I probably agree with you in this vein, because multitasking in the sense of taking time from one project to another, I don't love. But what I do love is making sure that you can context switch with purpose, right?
Okay.
Are you familiar with context switching?
Yes, but maybe our listeners aren't. So let's dive into that with them.
So when you wake up in the morning, let's say you get your kids off to school, you come back, you open up your computer, you've got 7 tabs open, you check Facebook because it's a great distractor. And then all of a sudden you're like, you know what? It's work time. It's work time. I've got to start working. So you open up your email and you know what? Now it's like, oh my goodness, I've seen this ad. It's right around Valentine's Day. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to purchase this. Well, now I'm on Amazon. And then it's like, oh, no. I've got to get back to work. So now I open up Asana or Trello. So that is a mess, number one. But number two, it's very, very normal for even the most productive people. We can go down these rabbit holes. That example shows you many times that you have shifted your context. And when you limit that to say, maybe they're blocks of time, maybe you're very regimented. That is not necessarily super common, but it could be. But you will say from the first hour of my day, let's say I'm going to check emails. That's the only time of the day that I'm going to check emails. I'm not coming back to my email box until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And so you outline your day to where you minimize the amount of context switching. So if I am super focused on visibility, maybe I will give myself 3 2-hour blocks throughout the week to really focus on that. And I know exactly what to do because I've already outlined it.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm glad this is the direction you took the multitasking, because if you look at my calendar, I have different blocks of time that are focused on different projects I have going on at any one time. I think that when you said that how they tie together, like they piggyback on each other, that actually, if anyone listening probably took a deep breath and was like, oh, it's not just me. Because people are told like, nope, you work on one project, then you go to the next and the next. And if that really was the case, it would seem very simple of which project to work on first, second, and third. But if anyone's like me, and I think probably you, Natalie, like you look at it, you can't really say first, second, and third because some of two has to be done so that number one project can move forward. And so giving people permission that it's okay to be focusing on more than one project at one time.
Yes, absolutely. And you really do have to build a strong business that has multiple arms and multiple revenue streams. You're going to have to get very good at multitasking with purpose. And we're all going to have multiple objectives that we're pulled on, right? Like sometimes people are like, I can't narrow it down to 3. And I'm like, I totally understand. But for right now, let's just focus on these 3. That doesn't mean that the bottom 4 don't get any attention. They just don't get as much attention. And so there are a lot of different ways. When I'm working with people, I really have to get to know how that person thinks, how they process, how they stress. I always say that the way that somebody stresses will definitely teach me and how to manage them. But some people are very, very regimented and are very, very controlled in their environment. And others are very type B, if you will, and can flex very easily. And then it's my job to make sure that they have parameters around what they're supposed to be doing so that we can still hit the milestones and the deadlines that we've set out.
Okay. So I have a couple questions. When you said how they stress, can you give us some examples of how you see business owners stress and what that means to you? I've never heard that terminology before, so I'm so intrigued.
So let's say you have a launch coming up. I'm going to make this big picture for right now, but you have a launch coming up because you've created this online course and you have outsourced your Facebook ads to a Facebook ad specialist. They come back, you don't like them, but you really want to kind of vet this and, you want to have a really good conversation with that person to hopefully get them back on track so that you can move forward. But it's really a disaster in this business owner's mind. All of a sudden they're like, I'm never going to get this done. I don't even know what to do. I thought she was the expert, and now I feel like I'm having to do this. And so it's their meltdown moment. It's that moment where you feel out of control. It's how you deal with an obstacle. And we have them all the time. I mean, G-Manese, we have them multiple times a day. Hopefully we have less and less of them, but it's natural. I mean, we are individuals, we're human, we make errors and we don't always communicate effectively. So at the end of the day, we end up with a few more bumps than we would like, but I get to really see how people stress. And I was working with a gentleman this morning and he's just overwhelmed. I would say the stress that I saw this morning was, I've got to be very gentle with how much I give him at one time. And even going over the full project plan, I could see his eyes getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And what it told me was, you know what? I only need to worry about phase 1. I, Natalie, like to see the full 4 phases. This gentleman, I know that I'm going to block out. He is not even going to be able to see phase 2, 3, and 4 until we are a third of the way done with 1. So that's what I mean by how people stress.
Yeah. And I feel like with the guy that you were working with, just you assuring him, hey, I see us all the way to the end of phase 4 and I know what that looks like. But for right now, here's what we're going to focus on. I bet that just made him breathe easy and probably sleep tonight. Like, okay, I got Natalie in my court. This is going to be okay. I just need to focus on X, Y, and Z.
Yes. And you have to know people's bandwidth. Some people, more the visionaries, they don't even think about the weeds or the tasks that need to get done. They can just see the end of the rainbow. And that's the opposite of the gentleman I was working with this morning. So they love to see the future. They love to see what the end looks like. They kind of like the bow on the package.
Right.
Many people out there, and the majority of people are not visionaries. So that is a skill set that is rare in itself, but you find them in entrepreneurship everywhere because they love how agile they can be in this environment. So anyway, I'm getting off topic, but
no, that's okay. So I have some questions to bring us back on topic. So you recommended that you focus on the top 3 objectives. You may be working on some of the other 4, but they don't get as much time. Now, how many projects do you recommend that somebody work on at any given time?
It's all based on how many tentacles come from a project. Like a project launch, if you're putting out a product, you will have many tentacles to making sure that that gets out the door, and they will cover many objectives. So the marketing, the team, the operational efficiencies, the actual product, the financial implications. I mean, that's 5 objectives right there. And so a lot of times beyond the quote unquote run the trains, you may only be able to take on one project. So I never recommend more than 3 projects at a time, regardless of how big or how small they are. I don't care how big your team is. Even this team that I'm working with that has 10 people on it, we cannot tackle more than 2 big projects at one time.
Okay, that's good advice. Now, when you were describing not being able to just work on products, because then you'll have no one to sell it to because you're not visible, and then you'll have no one to help you actually execute the product because you don't have your team from scaling. Mm-hmm. In my head, I was just thinking of like this company that you worked for, this Fortune 150 company, is every objective that you were naming is an entire different department.
Absolutely.
And in a small business, we don't have the benefit of different departments running all the time, working on their different areas of expertise, or we're calling them objectives this time. And so it has to be you. You can't just be one department for 4 weeks. That's an entire month. You're not working on any other aspect of your business. And I can see how negative that could be if you're totally too focused on one and leaving the rest unworked on. I guess that's probably not even the right term, but not focusing on them.
Yes, Amber, that was the best analogy. I've never seen it positioned like that. But from those 15 years in corporate America, I can tell you, I'm looking at this list of objectives, and visibility is a full department. I mean, our marketing department, which is the same as visibility, it had many units underneath that. We're thinking of scaling and that professional development. That's an HR department. Our HR department had 1,000 people in it. So yes, I mean, we are one organization with many departments in one person. And so it's super critical to make sure you know where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and to be able to pull together a team that can really augment your gaps.
Okay, this is really good. This is actually just in my geeking out zone. Like, I really love projects. And so I'm going back to when I was in corporate, and my corporate experience is I worked for the same corporation for 12 years, and I was moved around countless times. And I would go to a department that I didn't know anything about. And I would go in and I would rework the processes, the workflow, systems, the staffing, and just looking at things from a different perspective. And then I would be done, and they would bring in a regular manager that can manage the day-to-day. And then I would go to a different department. And the key to what I did was that I was project-based. Like, I would see everything as a project. I would analyze the department, see what worked, see what didn't work, and then create these projects. And initially it started out because my regular job to me just wasn't challenging. Like, I would work so effectively and efficiently to try and get my core job requirements done in the least amount of time, just so that I could have the fun and time to do projects. Because that's where I just felt challenged that I was doing something that wasn't, mundane. And that was my experience with projects. And so I brought that same thing into my business, and that I'm always working on projects. I feel like if I was just servicing my clients and I was just doing the same thing I did today or last week or last month, I would feel so stagnated. I would feel like my business plateaued and wasn't growing. And so I really look at projects as an opportunity to level up every time I choose a project.
Yes, I love it. And sometimes for people that are like you and I, and most business people, we set goals. And so now in that goal, we have many projects to kind of reach that goal. And so we're very goal focused. And I can definitely see how that is motivating to people.
Yeah, I actually just had a strategy session with one of my clients and his right-hand person, and we're doing this whole whiteboard layout. And all it was we created buckets in his business. And so it wasn't the same exact 7 that you were talking about with objectives, but we created his buckets that were specific for his industry. And we brain dumped everything we could think of with regards to projects in each bucket. And then from the buckets, I had him create, okay, so what is your first, second, and third priority with projects? And then when he gets one of them done, we're going to pick another one. Like, what's the next right step? And I think that worked for him because oftentimes we think, well, once we create this list, I don't know about anyone that's listening, but for me, I'm like, I want it all done now. And so it's so hard to pick, like, what are just those 3 that you're going to be focused on? And then the other thing is that this is a good question for you being the project manager. Do you have like hard deadlines for every project? Or do you kind of let the project unfold to see, well, how detailed is it? How much is involved in it before you actually set a deadline for it to be completed?
When I begin a project with a client, I never talk about a deadline or, if they're coming to me and they're like, oh, I'm going to launch on May 1st of 2018, it typically never starts off on the right foot. And so what I try to do is walk through what it is that they want to complete. And I need to assess their team and their strengths, because you know what? If they don't have the right team, we may take 6 weeks onboarding somebody that's actually going to be able to truly be beneficial to getting this done. And so I have to assess many more things before we can come up with a date. So it's natural to kind of have an idea or a time frame, but the majority of projects are going to take 4 months to get out the door from start to completion. And that's if you have a fully functioning team and resources to make this go well. So I never like to start with a date. I like to start with a plan. And then we set milestones that keep us accountable in the middle of the project. And the end, I like the end to be a pretty hard date. And in the industries that I'm working with a lot of online entrepreneurs, the date matters. Can you shift it? Oh, yes. But it's part of my profession to make sure that we're really good stewards of the dates and the times and the tasks that we have set. So to make sure I never get off track and we are very transparent, me and the client, the entire process is to make sure that we have those milestones, those key deadlines while the project is going on. And I try to break it out into like marketing phases. Of course, there's always a couple things that overlap, but very, very important to make sure that you have those mid-project check-ins to make sure that we're all accountable.
Okay, I love that. The importance of milestones, because with someone that's not particularly a project manager mindset, and they really are the business owner. And like you said in your opening quote, is that if you don't have one, then you are one, meaning being a project manager. There was a lot of gold in what you just said. And I'm just going to try and peel back some of the things that I heard. One of them is that you do not focus on the date first, but really explore in detail what the project is and all the detail that it takes to get the project done. And then you said you assess your team. And I don't know that business owners are always assessing their team. They may just think, well, I got a team and I pay them and this is a project that has to get done, so it's going to get done, without really opening it up, saying, well, maybe I don't have the right people to make this such a smooth process to get this project done. So I love that question. And I loved that you said, again, with the milestones, it's making people think not just from A to Z, but everything in between. And then when you do that, it's forcing you to say, oh, well, maybe this isn't a 2-month project, being that each milestone takes 5 weeks. Then you can actually see it on paper on what it's going to take to get this project up and going. So really, 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 really good advice. So what are some other tips that you have if someone is a business owner and they are their own project manager? I would say tips, but also, is there a skill set that they can work on improving so that they can see better outcomes in their business with regards to project managing?
The biggest tip, which is so simple and so overrated and underspoken about, is just making sure that you get everything out of your head and onto paper. I don't know if it's paper or electronic virtual paper, if you will, but making sure that you have a system to put all of this into? Because there's somebody, you've got an administrative arm, or you can easily attract an administrative arm to your business to really help you get on track. And they'll never be able to do that if you cannot take your vision and put it onto a piece of paper. So everything from big vision to tiny task of, I need to feed my dog, whatever it is. I mean, all of those things matter because I really just did this for my own personal life, right? This weekend. And it's a busy time. I've got lots of, I've got 2 kids. I've got a husband. We've got holidays in front of us. And I will tell you that I was just feeling that overwhelmed that everybody feels. And the best, literally, I wrote everything out. I put it in Trello. That's my tool of choice. And I put it all in Trello and I looked at it. And I will tell you, Amber, it was an ridiculous list. And I thought, well, no wonder I'm feeling like crud. It's because my mind is literally trying to juggle all of these things. And so I feel like I have deposited those once I get them out of my head and into paper or virtual paper. And now I really feel free and I'm motivated. I'm also able to think big again because I don't have that cloud inside of me of like, oh, I'm never going to remember that. I mean, do we tell ourselves that all the time? So that's a very simple, very easy to do thought, but just get everything as often as you can. I'm not a huge proponent of sticky notes, but whatever you need to do to get that out of your head and find a place, one repository where you hold everything and then let you or your team divvy those things up.
Okay, this was really good. So my tool of choice is Trello as well. We actually got to geek out about that as well when we met in October. And I'm a big proponent of just brain dumping, like dumping everything out of our heads. As of the time that we're recording this episode, I just released an episode for the holidays, and it's about going into the holidays like Santa does. And Santa makes a list and checks it twice. And this is good recommendations to get through the holidays, but also through big projects. And he makes a list of naughty or nice. And my recommendation was to make a list of have to do and want to do. And in the holidays, I have a lot of want to do's. Like I want to take my son ice skating on the ice skating rink. I want to go see the lights. I want to do this. I want to make candy. Those are all want to's. But if you don't get it out of your head, you think they're have to's. And then you're like, well, when am I going to find the time? And how is this all going to get done? And none of that can happen and process until you get it out of your head so that you can see it all and then create the plan on how you're going to get after it. And so very similar from the holidays, which you and I are talking about because it's timely. But also project managing is we get overwhelmed with all of the details and you don't know where to start or what to focus on. And so getting it out into a process in front of you, and you called it virtual paper. So love that. I would recommend as well. So great tip. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So I think that this was a great episode about project managing and just getting a snippet into the head of a project manager. I think is going to be so valuable for all of us listening. How do our listeners find out more about you? Like if they're like, oh my gosh, a project manager exists, I can hire one. Like it doesn't need to be me. How do they find you, Natalie?
If you go to my website, Natalie Gingrich, and I'm going to spell that for you because it's special.
Yes.
Natalie. And my last name is Gingrich. So it's nataliegingrich.com. And I am also on Facebook. If you go to facebook.com/Natalie Gingrich PM, like project manager, you will find me there. And I'm releasing content pretty regularly. So I would enjoy you hopping around and hopping over there.
Okay, great. And I believe that you have something a little bit special for our listeners here today that you would like to share with them.
I sure do. When you're super motivated to get your projects in order for your business, I highly encourage you to stop yourself there. I know you're like, what? You're
what? Manager. She's telling me not to go forward with my projects? This has got to be good.
Not until you get your mission, vision, and values. And so after working with 200 business owners in this last year, I really started to understand where the breakdown was. And it really was that a lot of even established scaling, money-making, profit-producing businesses just haven't taken the time to define their mission, vision, and values. Without that foundation, you can literally make some really silly decisions that don't tie to your core values. Maybe somewhat of a star comes to you and wants to, and they're attracted to your business, but that person or that person's business doesn't attach, it doesn't really mimic your core values. And it was their stardom that kind of got you interested in them. And all of a sudden you're like, I'm in an affiliate relationship with someone that really doesn't even sing my same song. So that is just one very small example, but you've got to make sure that you get your mission, vision, and values. And so to help you do that, I put together a guide, and you can find that at nataliegingrich.com/mission. So check it out. You can also come to my page. I ask people all the time to update their missions. Doesn't matter how long you've been in business or how new you are to business. If you were to go to the bank and ask them for money, they're going to ask you for your mission and vision. So you might as well do it. It's something that you have to define or refine, because really business today moves so quickly. Tools, success, timing, all of that can really change what the business looks like. So make sure you do it, and make sure you redo it as often as you can.
Oh my gosh, Natalie, this is a great example of you being like able to finish my sentences. The whole time you were talking, I was like, I'm going to tell them that even if they have it, they should redo it. And you totally hit that home. So great job, Natalie. So anyone that's listening, to make sure that you go get that. It will be in the show notes as well. And I'll highlight that in just a few moments where you can get that. Thank you so much, Natalie, for investing your time with us today and sharing your knowledge and some great nuggets all about project managing and our business.
Thanks so much, Amber. It's a blast being here.
Well, wasn't that a great interview with Natalie? Getting inside her head to see how strategic she is and how she is able to share that knowledge with us, for those of us that may not be as strategic as her. I think the information she provided is so spot on, and I'm really, really glad that we got to have her on the Productivity Straight Talk show. Natalie gave us so much good information about every business owner's top 7 objectives and how to categorize your business into those to be very, very strategic. So my question for you is, what are you going to be focusing on? How are you going to prioritize these 7 objectives in your business? I have loved having you listen to Productivity Straight Talk, but I need to be straight with you. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So based on what you learned today from Natalie, what are you going to take action on? I really want you to give that a thought for a moment. I want you to get really, really clear about what is the small but big step that you can take in your business based on what you learned today. I would love for you to share your actionables from this episode inside our private Facebook group. You can join us by going to productivitycommunity.com. Again, that's productivitycommunity.com. I would love for you to join us on the inside of our private Facebook group, because it's inside there that I do regular Facebook Lives. I go deeper on the topics. We have accountability for what action that you're willing to take after you've learned something from each episode. So if you are looking to not just gain more knowledge, but really take action in your business based on the knowledge that you've just obtained, then join us on the inside by going to productivitycommunity.com. And if you've enjoyed this episode, I would be so grateful if you would share it with another entrepreneur who you feel would find it valuable. The gift of sharing an episode is not just to who you're sending it to because you're thinking of them and you know that the content can help them grow their business, be more profitable and less stressed, but it's a gift to me, and I really, really appreciate every share that I've gotten out there. And if you feel compelled to do so, I would love a review. I want to share with you what Carol Cox left for me on the reviews in iTunes. Amber is the real deal, smart, fun, and knowledgeable. Her podcast episodes are always full of actionable insights and stories to learn from. Thank you so much, Carol, for sending us that review. I have a gift for you. I want you to stop screwing your productivity. So I have a freebie download of the top 10 ways entrepreneurs are screwing their productivity and not really intentionally. So you may be doing these and not even know it. So if you haven't already gotten your free download of the top 10 ways that you're screwing your productivity, you can do so by going to theproductivityspecialist.com/screw. SCREW. I would love for every one of you to get this download so that you're more aware of the ways in which you could possibly and unintentionally be wasting a lot of time. And that's my straight talk for you today. Until next time, have a productive week.